My name is Ernestine, and at 34 years old, I thought I understood my place in our family. I was always the outsider with curly auburn hair and hazel eyes in a sea of straight blondes with blue eyes. My sister Amanda made sure I never forgot it. During our parents' 40th anniversary dinner, she presented DNA test kits with a smirk determined to prove I didn't belong. 6 weeks later, when the results arrived, every smile in that room froze. The truth was far more devastating than anyone could have imagined. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to hear how a simple DNA test changed our family forever. I grew up in a pristine suburb outside Chicago, where our upper-middle-class lifestyle afforded all the trappings of the American dream. Our 4-bedroom colonial with its manicured lawn and 2-car garage housed what appeared to be the perfect family. My father William built a successful career as a corporate attorney, while my mother Diana dedicated herself to pediatric nursing 3 days a week at the local children's hospital. From the outside, looking in, we were picture perfect. But appearances can be deceiving. From my earliest memories, I knew I looked different. Family photos told the story without words. My father, mother, and Amanda all shared the same straight blonde hair, crystal blue eyes, and fair complexions. Then there was me with my unruly auburn curls, hazel eyes, and skin that tanned easily in the summer Sunday. The physical differences were impossible to ignore, and no one let me forget them. "Are you sure she's yours?" relatives would joke at family gatherings, not realizing how those words cut through me. "The mailman must have made a special delivery," my uncle would quip after one too many glasses of whiskey at Christmas. The adults would laugh while I pretended not to hear a skill I perfected by age 7. Even professional photographers assumed I was adopted during family portrait sessions. "And where would you like the adopted daughter to stand?" one asked when I was 10. My mother's face flushed crimson as she quickly corrected him, but the damage was done. Another drop in the bucket of doubt that was slowly filling my childhood. School wasn't any easier. During 3rd grade parent-teacher conferences, Mrs. Patterson innocently asked my parents about my real parents while I sat between them. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt like hours. My father cleared his throat and firmly stated, "We are her real parents." The conversation moved on, but the question lingered in my mind for years. Amanda, 2 years, my senior at 36, wielded our differences like a weapon from the start. When she hosted slumber parties with neighborhood girls, I was never included. "This is for real friends only," she would say, shutting her bedroom door in my face. She told the neighborhood children not to play with her adoptive sister, a lie that spread through our community like wildfire. The cruelest incident happened when I was 12. I had discovered my love for art and spent weeks preparing for the school art competition. The night before submissions were due, my carefully organized supplies vanished. Hours later, after a frantic search, I found them hidden in the attic. Amanda feigned innocence, but her smug smile told me everything I needed to know. I stayed up all night, recreating my work, fueled by determination and spite. When I won 2nd place, the victory tasted sweeter than any 1st place ribbon could have. My parents tried in their own way to make me feel included. "You belong with us," Ernestine, my mother, would assure me after particularly difficult days. "You're just as much our daughter as Amanda is." Yet they never directly addressed the obvious differences in our appearances. Whenever I asked specific questions about my birth, my mother would become visibly uncomfortable changing the subject, or suddenly remembering urgent laundry that needed attention. One night when I was 15, I overheard my parents arguing in hushed tones behind their bedroom door. "We should tell her the truth someday," my father insisted. "It would destroy everything," my mother countered, her voice breaking. We made a promise. I never discovered what they meant, but those words planted a seed of doubt that would grow for decades. Despite the challenges, I developed resilience through creative outlets. Art became my sanctuary, a place where differences were celebrated, not ridiculed. I filled sketchbooks with drawings and paintings, creating worlds where I belonged completely. Writing became another escape, journals filled with thoughts too complex to share aloud. I found friendship with other outsiders at school. Jessica, with her thick glasses and encyclopedic knowledge of astronomy. Marcus, who preferred books to basketball despite his father's disappointment. Together we created our own community, where uniqueness was valued. These connections sustained me through the lonely family dinners and awkward holiday gatherings, where I always felt like an audience member rather than a participant. As high school ended, I set my sights on New York City, as far from Chicago as my ambitions could reasonably take me. When acceptance letters arrived, my parents seemed both proud and relieved. Amanda simply rolled her eyes and said, "Finally going to find your real family in the big city." I smiled through gritted teeth, already counting down the days until I could leave. College at Pratt Institute opened a world where my differences became strengths rather than burdens. My curls and hazel eyes were just features, not mysteries to be solved or evidence of not belonging. My talent for graphic design blossomed under professors who pushed me to harness my unique perspective. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Post-graduation reality hit hard. My Brooklyn apartment, shared with 3 other aspiring creatives, was nothing like the glossy New York life I had imagined. Freelance jobs barely covered ramen and rent, while I interviewed at design firms across the city. Rejection piled upon rejection, until finally Blackwell Creative took a chance on me as a junior designer. Meanwhile, Amanda followed the script our parents had written. She graduated with a business degree from Illinois State, married James, a wealthy real estate developer from our hometown, at 25, and settled into a 5,000-square-foot McMansion 3 streets over from our parents. Her life choices were celebrated as achievements, while my struggling artist phase was treated as a concerning detour. "When are you going to get a real job and settle down?" became the refrain at every family phone call. My parents meant well, but they couldn't understand why I'd choose uncertainty over security. Amanda didn't bother with subtlety. "Some of us have to maintain the family reputation, while others play artist in New York," she'd say during holiday visits. The wedge between us grew deeper during Amanda's wedding. I flew home expecting to be a bridesmaid alongside her college friends. Instead, she assigned me to help the photographer coordinate family photos. "You have an eye for that sort of thing," she explained, with a dismissive wave. "Besides, the color scheme wouldn't work with your hair." I swallowed my hurt and played my part, smiling for pictures where I barely belonged. 2 years later, at Christmas, Amanda announced her pregnancy with theatrical timing during gift opening. As family members rushed to congratulate her, she pulled me aside with champagne glass in hand. "At least someone's carrying on the real family genes," she whispered, her smile never reaching her eyes. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried silently, wondering why my sister's happiness always seemed contingent on my pain. When our father turned 60, Amanda gave a speech about the true family legacy, continuing through her son, pointedly excluding me from the narrative. My mother noticed my expression and squeezed my hand under the table, but remained silent. Their pattern was clear: acknowledge my hurt privately, but never confront Amanda's cruelty publicly. While family dynamics remained frozen in childhood patterns, my career gained momentum. My campaign for an independent bookstore chain won industry recognition, leading to a promotion to senior designer. 2 years later, I became creative director, overseeing a team of designers and securing clients that once seemed beyond reach. When I purchased my loft apartment in Brooklyn, I sent my parents photos. They called to congratulate me, genuine pride in their voices. Amanda's reaction was predictably bitter. "Must be nice to focus only on yourself, while some of us are raising the next generation," she texted, after seeing my apartment photos on social media. I didn't respond, having learned that engagement only fueled her resentment. Behind her curated social media presence, Amanda's perfect life showed cracks. James worked increasingly long hours, leaving her alone with their son Michael. Her identity had become so tied to being a mother and wife that she had little sense of herself beyond those roles. When James missed their anniversary for a business trip, she called me in tears, then the next day acted as though the conversation never happened. The Thanksgiving when I was 32 marked a turning point. Amanda had been drinking wine steadily throughout dinner when the conversation turned to Michael's school performance. "He gets his brains from our side of the family," she said, then looked directly at me. "Well, from my side anyway. We still don't know where you came from, do we?" The table fell silent. My father stared at his plate. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. No one defended me. No one acknowledged the cruelty of her words. I stood up, slowly placed my napkin beside my half-eaten pumpkin pie, and said, "I think I'll turn in early. Good night, everyone." As I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, the conversation resumed below as if nothing had happened. That night I booked an earlier flight back to New York and made an appointment with a therapist the following week. Dr. Melanie Jordan helped me process years of family trauma and establish healthier boundaries. "You can love your family without accepting mistreatment," she reminded me during our sessions. "Their issues aren't yours to solve." Despite the painful dynamics, I maintained my relationship with my parents through regular calls and annual visits. They were flawed, but loving in their way. Our conversations carefully sidestepped anything related to my appearance or Amanda's behavior, focusing instead on my work, their health, and neutral topics like films or books. Meanwhile, I built a chosen family in New York, friends who celebrated my successes without qualification. Weekend brunches, gallery openings, and impromptu movie nights created a support system based on mutual respect rather than obligation. When I met Jackson at a client's product launch party, his warmth and genuine interest in my work felt refreshingly straightforward after years of navigating family complexities. Jackson became my anchor during family visits, encouraging me to stand up for myself while respecting my complicated feelings. When the invitation arrived for my parents' 40th anniversary celebration at the Drake Hotel in Chicago, his immediate response was, "I'm coming with you. You shouldn't face that alone." His protective instinct touched me deeply, though I worried about subjecting him to the full dysfunction of my family dynamics. "They're going to love me," he assured me with characteristic confidence, "and if they don't, we'll fly back early and spend the weekend exploring Brooklyn instead." With his support, I RSVP'd yes to the celebration, unaware that the weekend would unravel 4 decades of family secrets. The Drake Hotel stood elegantly against the Chicago skyline, its historic facade, a fitting venue for celebrating 40 years of marriage. Jackson whistled appreciatively as we entered the private dining room my father had reserved for the occasion. "Your family doesn't do things halfway," he murmured, taking in the crystal chandeliers and lake view. My parents greeted us warmly, my mother pulling me into a tight embrace. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said, her eyes misting slightly. My father shook Jackson's hand firmly, immediately launching into questions about his work in architectural photography. Their effort to make us feel welcome was evident if slightly overcompensated. Amanda arrived fashionably late with James and 7-year-old Michael in tow. She kissed my cheeks, her perfume cloud nearly overwhelming. "Love the dress," she said, eyeing my navy cocktail dress. "Vintage." The familiar backhanded compliment signaled that nothing had changed between us despite my hopes for a peaceful weekend. Throughout the cocktail hour, Amanda's comments grew increasingly pointed. When our cousin Brenda mentioned my recent feature in a design magazine, Amanda interjected, "Creative types always did run on Mom's side of the family. Well, most of us anyway." She laughed lightly, clinking her glass against mine with just enough force to slosh champagne onto my wrist. By the time we moved to the elegantly set dining tables, extended family had arrived. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the room with chatter and laughter. 40 roses arranged in a crystal vase served as the centerpiece one for each year of my parents' marriage. Cream-colored place cards with gold calligraphy guided everyone to their seats. Jackson and I were placed safely across from my parents with Amanda's family at the adjacent table. After the main course of filet mignon and butter-poached lobster, various family members offered toasts. Uncle Robert reminisced about my father's nervous energy before the wedding. Aunt Susan shared stories of my mother's patient kindness during family crises. Grandpa George, at 85, managed to stand briefly to declare my parents the gold standard of partnership. As dessert plates of chocolate soufflé were served, my father announced it was time for gifts. "Diana and I are touched by your presence here tonight. That's gift enough, but I understand our daughters have prepared something special." I went first, presenting my carefully chosen gift. For months I had worked with an artist to commission a watercolor painting of the small Cape Cod house where my parents began their marriage. The artist had captured every detail from the slightly crooked mailbox to the rose bushes my mother had planted that first spring. When she unwrapped it, my mother gasped, tears flowing freely. "It's perfect," she whispered, reaching for my hand. My father cleared his throat repeatedly, emotion visibly overcoming him. The room applauded appreciatively as the painting was passed around for everyone to admire. Then it was Amanda's turn. She stood smoothing her designer dress, a self-satisfied smile playing at her lips. "Mom and Dad, your marriage has been built on honesty, commitment, and family bonds," she began, her voice carrying across the now quiet room. "Tonight, I wanted to celebrate those values with a gift that brings us closer together through shared heritage and truth." From her oversized purse, she produced a gift bag with tissue paper spilling from the top. "I've purchased Ancestry DNA test kits for our family." She removed 4 white boxes emblazoned with colorful logos. "Isn't it fascinating what science can tell us about who we really are?" The room responded with interested murmurs, but I froze, instantly recognizing her true intent. This wasn't about celebrating heritage. This was Amanda's calculated move to publicly confirm what she had insinuated for years. She handed boxes to our parents with a flourish, then walked directly to me, extending the last box with exaggerated ceremony. "I'm particularly excited to see your results, Ernestine." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Now we'll finally solve the mystery of where those curls came from." Uncomfortable silence descended on the room. A few nervous laughs punctuated the tension, but most guests suddenly found their desserts fascinating. Jackson's hand found mine under the table, squeezing reassuringly. My father attempted to pivot. "What a modern gift, Amanda. Technology these days is remarkable." His voice strained for normalcy. My mother's face had drained of color. She clutched her napkin with white knuckles, eyes darting between me and Amanda. I caught my grandmother's sharp intake of breath, her eyes widening slightly before she composed herself. In that moment I faced a choice: storm out dramatically, or maintain dignity in the face of humiliation. Jackson's presence anchored me, his thumb tracing circles on my palm beneath the tablecloth. I took a steadying breath and accepted the box with a calm I didn't feel. "Thank you, Amanda. How thoughtful." I placed the box beside my plate and raised my water glass. "To truth and family in all its forms." The toast allowed others to move past the awkward moment, conversation gradually resuming around us. The drive back to my parents' house, where we were staying overnight, was tense. My mother made stilted conversation about neighborhood changes, while my father focused intently on the road. In the back seat, I stared out the window at familiar streets, the DNA test box heavy in my purse. Once in my childhood bedroom, the purple walls unchanged since high school, I finally broke down. Jackson held me as years of hurt spilled out in messy sobs. "Why does she hate me so much? What did I ever do except exist?" I asked, between gulping breaths. "This isn't about you," Jackson said, firmly brushing hair from my tear-streaked face. "This is about her insecurities. Happy, secure people don't try to publicly humiliate their siblings." As my breathing calm determination replaced hurt. "I'm going to take the test," I announced. "I'm tired of the whispers and insinuations. Whatever the truth is, it can't be worse than decades of wondering." The next morning I followed the instructions, spitting into the small tube and sealing it in the prepaid package. At the post office, I hesitated only briefly before dropping it into the mail slot. 6 weeks of waiting lay ahead. 6 weeks of wondering whether I was about to confirm my lifelong suspicion that I didn't fully belong to the family that raised me. Those weeks were excruciating. Amanda sent weekly texts asking if my results had arrived, each message thinly disguised as casual interest. "Just curious if science has any answers yet," she wrote, adding a winking emoji that made my stomach clench. Her social media became a carefully constructed narrative, throwback photos of herself with our parents' captions emphasizing family resemblances, subtle references to bloodlines and heritage. Each post was a paper cut to my already raw emotions. The stress affected my work. Designs that normally flowed easily now required painful concentration. Clients noticed my distraction during presentations. Jackson encouraged me to take time off, but work was my only effective distraction from constant anxiety. Our relationship strained under the pressure. Date nights became opportunities for me to obsess over potential test results and family scenarios. Jackson listened patiently, offering reassurance that nothing would change how he felt about me, but I could see the concern in his eyes growing with each passing week. No matter what those results say, you're still you, he reminded me one night. As we lay in bed, my thoughts too loud for sleep. Your identity isn't determined by genetics. His words comforted me temporarily, but as the notification email finally arrived during an important client meeting, my heart raced so violently I feared others could hear it. I excused myself to the bathroom, staring at the unread message on my phone screen. I chose not to open it immediately. My mother's birthday dinner was scheduled for the following evening. Amanda would be there. If I was going to face life-altering information, I wanted everyone involved present for the revelation. My parents' favorite restaurant, an upscale Italian place with private dining rooms, had been the setting for family celebrations since I was young. As Jackson and I arrived for my mother's birthday dinner, familiar anxiety tightened my chest. The notification about my DNA results remained unread, a digital time bomb waiting to explode. Amanda was already there holding court at the center of the table. She wore a cream-colored dress that highlighted her tan diamond studs glinting when she turned her head. Her husband James looked uncomfortable, checking his watch repeatedly. My parents sat together, their smiles a bit too bright, tension evident in their posture. "The guest of honor arrives," Amanda announced as I took my seat. "And with news, I hope." Her eyes darted to my purse expectantly. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, ignoring my sister, and presenting the gift box containing the silk scarf I'd bought in a small Greenwich Village boutique. My mother unwrapped it with genuine delight, immediately draping it around her shoulders. Throughout appetizers and main courses, Amanda maintained an air of smug confidence. She dominated conversation with stories about Michael's private school achievements and James's recent business successes. Beneath her animated gestures and bright laughter, I sensed an unusual nervousness. She drank more wine than usual, her movements becoming slightly less precise as the evening progressed. When dessert arrived, a tiramisu with a single candle for my mother to blow out, Amanda could no longer contain herself. "So, Ernestine, any interesting emails lately?" She set down her wine glass with exaggerated care. "I got my results yesterday. Fascinating stuff." The table fell silent. My father stopped mid-bite, fork suspended above his plate. My mother's smile froze, her eyes darting between her daughters. "Actually, yes," I said calmly, though my heart raced. "I received notification about my results earlier this week." "Well, this calls for a family review, doesn't it?" Amanda pulled out her tablet already queued to the Ancestry website. "After all, we're celebrating family tonight." Her tone suggested casual interest, but her eyes gleamed with anticipated triumph. "Amanda, perhaps this isn't the time," my father began, but she waved away his concern. "It's just science, Dad. Nothing to worry about if there's nothing to hide." She turned the tablet toward me. "Ernestine should go first. It was her heritage we were most curious about, wasn't it?" The restaurant's ambient noise seemed to fade as I logged into my account, conscious of 5 sets of eyes watching intently. The colorful pie chart of genetic heritage loaded slowly, followed by potential genetic matches. As I read the information, understanding dawned with stunning clarity. I looked up, meeting my mother's frightened gaze. "According to this, I am genetically related to both William and Diana Jenkins." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "A 99.8% match as their biological daughter." Amanda snatched the tablet, scrolling frantically through my results. "That can't be right. The tests must be faulty." She logged out of my account and into her own with trembling fingers. As she read her own results, all color drained from her face. The tablet slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the table. "This is wrong," she whispered, then louder. "This is wrong." My father reached for the fallen device, scanning the information displayed. His wine glass slipped from his other hand, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. My mother burst into tears, hands covering her face. Jackson peered at the screen over my father's shoulder, then looked at me with wide eyes. I leaned across to see what had caused such dramatic reactions. The results showed Amanda's DNA markers were inconsistent with my father's profile. She was not biologically related to William Jenkins. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by my mother's quiet sobbing. Amanda stood abruptly, her chair tipping backward and crashing to the floor. You did this, she hissed at me, though the accusation made no logical sense. You manipulated the results somehow. Amanda, please sit down, James said quietly, reaching for his wife's arm. His face showed confusion and concern. Don't touch me, she snapped, jerking away. None of you understand what this means. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving James to apologize awkwardly before following her. In the vacuum left by Amanda's departure, my grandmother's whispered "I always wondered" carried clearly across the table. My grandfather studied his lap, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. My Uncle Robert cleared his throat, repeatedly shifting uncomfortably in his chair. I sat perfectly still, emotions cascading through me in overwhelming waves. Shock that I was undeniably my parents' biological child. Vindication after years of being treated as an outsider. Confusion about what this meant for our family structure. Concern for Amanda despite everything. We should talk tomorrow, my mother finally said, her voice hoarse from crying. In private. My father nodded, still unable to look directly at me. He signaled for the check, ending the celebration prematurely. The drive home happened in complete silence, the weight of unspoken truths filling the car. Back in our hotel room, Jackson and I tried to process what had happened. Are you okay? He asked, sitting beside me on the bed. I don't know what I am, I admitted. It's like finding out the story of your life was written in invisible ink, and someone just held it up to the light. My phone buzzed continuously with notifications. Text messages from extended family members who had obviously been informed about the dinner's dramatic conclusion. Amanda had sent a single message. You've destroyed this family. I hope you're satisfied. I turned my phone off, unable to handle more emotional weight. Tomorrow would bring conversations. I wasn't prepared for truths that had been buried for nearly 4 decades. Tonight I simply needed to breathe, to adjust to this new reality where I was the legitimate child and Amanda was not. Morning arrived with gray skies and light rain-fitting weather for the heavy conversations ahead. Jackson kissed me goodbye in our hotel lobby, agreeing to spend the day exploring Chicago while I met with my parents alone. Call me if you need me, he said, squeezing my hands. I can be there in 20 minutes. My childhood home looked smaller somehow as I pulled into the driveway. The neatly trimmed hedges and freshly painted shutters spoke of my parents' continued care, but an unfamiliar tension surrounded the property. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Ernestine, she said, simply pulling me into an embrace that felt both familiar and strange. Inside, my father sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, looking older than he had just yesterday. When I joined him at the table, he finally met my eyes. I don't know where to begin, he admitted, his voice lacking its usual confidence. My mother sat beside him, reaching for his hand. The beginning, I suppose. She took a deep breath, her shoulders straightening with resolve. The story unfolded slowly, painfully. 37 years ago, my father had a brief affair with a colleague during a difficult period in their marriage. When my mother discovered his infidelity, she was devastated. They separated for several months while deciding whether their marriage could survive. During that time, my mother continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I became involved with someone else. Thomas Bergman. He was a close family friend, someone who offered comfort when I needed it most. My father's grip tightened on his mug. When your mother and I decided to reconcile, she discovered she was pregnant. With Amanda, I said, the pieces finally fitting together. My mother nodded. I told your father immediately. We had to make a decision quickly. Thomas had already accepted a job in California. He never knew. I chose to raise Amanda as my own, my father said. We agreed never to tell anyone the truth. It seemed the kindest option for everyone, especially Amanda. After Amanda, we tried for years to have another child, my mother explained. We'd nearly given up when I became pregnant with you. You were our miracle baby, Ernestine. Proof that we could move beyond the mistakes of our past. The irony was almost too much to process. All those years of feeling like the outsider, the one who didn't belong, when in fact I was their only biological child together. Why did you treat us so differently? I asked, the question that had haunted me for decades, finally given voice. My parents exchanged pained glances. I think we overcompensated with Amanda, my father admitted. Guilt makes people do strange things. We were so afraid she would somehow sense she wasn't biologically mine that we poured extra attention her way. And with you, my mother added softly, I think we unintentionally created distance because you represented our real bond, the marriage we nearly lost. Every time I looked at you, I remembered both the best and worst periods of our life together. Anger flared within me hot and sudden, so I was punished for being legitimate, while Amanda was rewarded for not being so. Do you have any idea what that did to me? The years of therapy, the constant feeling of not belonging? Tears streamed down my mother's face. We made terrible mistakes, Ernestine. There's no excuse for how our guilt affected you. What about Amanda's biological father? This Thomas person, I asked, still struggling to integrate this new reality. Thomas moved to San Francisco, married, had other children. We lost touch decades ago, my father explained. As far as I know, he never suspected Amanda was his daughter. Are you going to tell him now? The question hung in the air between us. We don't know, my mother admitted. Our immediate concern is Amanda. She's not answering our calls. James says she's locked herself in their bedroom and refuses to speak to anyone. She's always defined herself by her place in this family, my father said. Her connection to me specifically. I'm worried about her mental state right now. Despite years of Amanda's cruelty, I felt unexpected empathy. Her entire identity had been built on a foundation that had just crumbled beneath her. What do you need from me? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Relief flooded my parents' faces. Your understanding for starters, my father said, and perhaps your help navigating this with the extended family. They respect you, Ernestine. Some are already calling with questions, my mother added. The Jenkins family resemblance has been discussed for generations. Now everyone wants answers we're not ready to give. We spent hours talking through practical concerns. Should they contact Thomas? How much should they tell the extended family? What support did Amanda need? The session with a family therapist later that week that Amanda had already refused to attend. The damage control needed in their social circles where gossip had already begun to spread. Through it all, a strange realization formed. Despite being wronged, I was now the family's emotional anchor. My years of therapy and self-discovery had prepared me for crisis in ways my parents and sister had never needed to develop. I agreed to stay in Chicago longer than planned, helping manage the unfolding situation. Jackson supported my decision, extending our hotel reservation and rescheduling his photography commitments. Our daily phone conversations became my sanity as I navigated complex family dynamics. I'm proud of you, he told me, during one late-night call. Not everyone would respond with such grace. I'm not sure it's grace, I admitted. Part of me wants to scream at them for decades of unnecessary pain, but that wouldn't solve anything now. As days passed, more details emerged. Through social media searches, I discovered Thomas Bergman was now a successful architect in San Francisco with 3 grown children. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier. His public profile showed a kind-faced man with silver hair who bore a striking resemblance to Amanda around the eyes and mouth. The revelation that he had no idea about Amanda presented an ethical dilemma that weighed heavily on all of us. Did he deserve to know about his daughter after all these years? A sharp knock at my hotel room door startled me awake at midnight. Jackson stirred beside me as I fumbled for my glasses and robe. Through the peephole I saw Amanda, her hair disheveled, makeup smeared around her eyes. Your sister Jackson guessed already, pulling on a t-shirt. I nodded, opening the door cautiously. The smell of wine wafted from Amanda as she pushed past me into the room. We need to talk, she slurred, dropping her designer purse on the floor. I'll give you two some privacy, Jackson said, gathering his phone and keycard. I'll be in the hotel lobby if you need me. The door clicked softly behind him, leaving me alone with the sister who had tormented me for years. How long have you known? Amanda demanded, pacing unsteadily between the beds. Was this your plan all along? To humiliate me like I supposedly humiliated you? I didn't know anything until the test results, I replied truthfully. This was your idea, remember, your test, your plan to expose me. She stopped pacing, her face crumpling. Everyone is talking about it. My friends, the country club, James's business partners. To my shock, tears began streaming down her face. James won't even look at me. Like somehow this is my fault. For the first time I saw beyond Amanda's perfect facade to the deeply insecure woman beneath. He'll come around, I said cautiously, sitting on the edge of the bed. This doesn't change who you are. Doesn't it? She shouted, anger flaring again. My whole life I thought I was a Jenkins, descended from Grandpa's distinguished family line. Carrier of the precious Jenkins genes that everyone always made such a fuss about. Her laugh was bitter, sharp-edged. Turns out I'm the product of Mom's revenge fling with some random friend. How poetic. The irony wasn't lost on me. At least now we know why you never looked like Dad, I offered, immediately regretting my words. Amanda's eyes narrowed dangerously. That's rich coming from you. Little orphan Ernestine, finally discovering she's the legitimate heir. She collapsed into the armchair by the window, suddenly deflated. You know what the worst part is? I always feared this. Deep down, I think I knew something wasn't right. What do you mean? I asked, surprised by her admission. Why do you think I was so obsessed with proving you weren't a real Jenkins? Because I needed to belong more than anything. I needed proof that at least one of us wasn't authentic. She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. If you weren't real, then I had to be. Understanding dawned slowly. Your cruelty came from insecurity. She laughed humorlessly. Amateur psychology, Ernestine. Yes, I suppose it did. Not that it excuses anything. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of decades of misunderstanding hanging between us. James thinks I deceived him, she finally said. Like I've known all along and deliberately trapped him into marrying damaged goods. You're not damaged goods, I said automatically. Tell that to the country club ladies whispering behind my back, or Michael's friend's parents suddenly canceling playdates. Her voice cracked. Our entire social circle is imploding. James is talking about moving to the West Coast to escape the gossip. Would that be so terrible? I asked. A fresh start. Easy for you to say. Your life is in New York. Mine is here. Was here. She stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. Unless this marriage doesn't survive the scandal, then who knows where I'll end up. Despite years of resentment, I found myself wanting to help this vulnerable version of my sister. Have you thought about reaching out to Thomas, your biological father? Her head whipped around. Absolutely not. The man abandoned Mom and me before I was even born. That's not exactly true, I said carefully. According to Mom, he never knew about you. He moved to California before she discovered she was pregnant. This new information visibly stunned her, so I wasn't rejected, just unknown. Her brow furrowed as she processed this distinction. Do you think he would want to know about me now? After all this time? I don't know, I answered honestly. But you might want to find out before making any major life decisions. Our conversation lasted until dawn, veering between painful accusations and moments of surprising connection. For the first time, we discussed our childhood from both perspectives. I described the pain of constant exclusion, while she revealed the pressure of perceived perfection. Neither of us had understood the other's experience until this moment of forced honesty. As sunlight began filtering through the hotel curtains, Amanda stood to leave steadier than when she had arrived. I don't know what happens next, she admitted, but I'm sorry, Ernestine. For everything. The simple apology delivered without qualification meant more than any elaborate gesture could have. Me too, I replied, for not trying harder to understand. In the days that followed, I became an unlikely mediator between family members. I arranged a session with my own therapist via video call, creating a safe space for my parents to discuss options. I gently suggested contacting Thomas through social media, offering him information without immediate expectations. When Amanda agreed to meet with our parents, I sat between them at the therapist's office, facilitating conversation when emotions threatened to overwhelm reason. The process was messy, tearful, and occasionally volatile, but slowly a new framework for our family began to emerge. Amanda continued to struggle with her identity and marriage. James's initial shock evolved into cautious support, especially after I spoke with him privately about family loyalty, transcending genetics. You've built a life together, I reminded him. a beautiful son. Amanda is the same woman you married, just with different ancestry. The true test came unexpectedly at the country club where my parents had been members for 30 years. During Sunday brunch, a group of women made deliberately audible comments about family scandals and questionable paternity as we passed their table. Before my parents could react, I stopped turning to face the gossips directly. Family is defined by love and commitment, not by DNA test results, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet dining room. The real scandal is how quickly people abandon decades of friendship over information that changes nothing of substance. I smiled pleasantly, adding, "Enjoy your mimosas, ladies," before continuing to our table. Amanda, who had witnessed the exchange, looked at me with new respect. "That was unexpected," she murmured as we sat down. "No one gets to shame our family but us," I replied with a small smile that surprisingly she returned. Through a carefully worded message, I helped my parents contact Thomas Bergman. His shocked response came within hours, followed by a request for a video call. Amanda initially refused to participate, then changed her mind at the last minute, sitting rigidly beside me as the call connected. The man on screen had kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled nervously. "Hello," he said simply. "This is quite unexpected." Amanda said nothing, staring at features so similar to her own. I squeezed her hand supportively. "Take your time," I whispered. "This is just a first step." As the weeks passed, new relationships formed cautiously. Thomas flew to Chicago for a brief visit, meeting Amanda for coffee, while James and I waited supportively at a nearby table. Their conversation was awkward, but civil, opening the door for future communication. When it was time for me to return to New York, Jackson surprised me at the airport by dropping to one knee beside the security line. "I've seen your strength these past weeks," he said, presenting a vintage emerald ring. "I want to face whatever comes next together." Through tears, I said yes, the silver lining to a storm I never expected. As we boarded the plane hand in hand, I realized I was stronger than I had ever known. 6 months passed, bringing crisp November air and Thanksgiving preparations. Despite initial hesitation, I agreed to host the holiday at my newly renovated Brooklyn loft. "Are you sure you want to invite everyone?" Jackson asked as we created guest lists. "No one would blame you for wanting a quieter celebration this year. Family healing happens around tables," I replied, thinking of the painful meals that had defined our past. "It's time to create new memories to replace the old ones." The apartment filled with delicious aromas as I prepared dishes from both my mother's traditional recipes and my own contemporary additions. Jackson hung twinkling lights along the exposed brick walls, creating a warm atmosphere that felt both festive and comforting. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath before opening it to find my parents standing awkwardly in the hallway, arms laden with pies and flowers. "Welcome," I said genuinely, happy to see them. The past months had brought weekly therapy sessions, honest conversations, and gradual rebuilding of trust between us. Amanda and James arrived next, with Michael bouncing excitedly between them. The strain in their relationship remained visible in subtle ways, but they had committed to marriage counseling and were working through their trust issues deliberately. "The loft looks amazing," Amanda said, handing me a bottle of wine. "You always did have the eye for design in the family." The compliment, delivered without her usual competitive edge, signaled continued progress in our evolving relationship. Dinner unfolded with new ease, conversation flowing naturally between topics. We had learned to acknowledge awkward moments rather than pretend they didn't exist. When Michael innocently mentioned his new grandfather in California, James smoothly explained that families sometimes grow in unexpected ways. After dessert, while the men watched football, and Michael played with the building blocks I had purchased, specifically for his visit, Amanda, and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen. She handed me a plate to dry, our domestic cooperation still a novelty after decades of antagonism. "I've been seeing Dr. Peterson twice a week," she said, referring to her therapist. "It's helping me process everything, the anger, the identity crisis, the fear." "I'm glad," I replied, carefully arranging dried plates in the cabinet. "I need to say something," she continued, setting down the dish she was washing. "Something I should have said months ago." She turned to face me fully, her expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. I am deeply, truly sorry for how I treated you our entire lives. There's no excuse for it, therapy, buzzwords or not. I was cruel to you consistently and deliberately. The simple, direct apology caught me off guard. Amanda. Please let me finish. You didn't deserve any of it. Not the childhood exclusion, not the adult humiliation, certainly not the DNA test ambush. You were always the better person, even when I gave you every reason to hate me. Tears filled her eyes. I don't expect instant forgiveness. I just need you to know that I recognize the pain I caused, and I'm committed to being different moving forward. I set down my dish towel, emotions tightening my throat. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. Can we try again? She asked hesitantly. Not as instant best friends, but maybe as sisters, learning to know each other for the first time. I'd like that, I replied honestly. The weight of decades of hurt didn't vanish with her apology, but the path forward seemed clearer than before. Later that evening, we gathered in the living room for what had become a healing ritual in our family honest conversation about difficult topics. My mother shared her ongoing email correspondence with Thomas, who had become an unexpected source of support during her journey of self-forgiveness. My father spoke about his therapy work, addressing the guilt he had carried for 40 years. Amanda explained her tentative steps toward building a relationship with Thomas and his children, her half-siblings. Michael FaceTimed with his cousins in San Francisco last week, she said. They're planning a visit this spring. It's strange, but good, expanding our family circle. James shared their decision to stay in Chicago, but move to a different suburb, a compromise that allowed fresh surroundings while maintaining professional connections. Their marriage counseling had revealed communication patterns that needed addressing beyond the DNA revelation. When it was my turn, I showed them the wedding magazine featuring the venue Jackson and I had selected for our summer ceremony. And I was hoping, I said, looking directly at Amanda, that you might consider being my bridesmaid. Her eyes widened in surprise. Are you sure? After everything? Family isn't just about the past, I said. It's about the future we choose to build together. The most noticeable change appeared in our family photographs. Where once we had been positioned to minimize differences, now our unique features were acknowledged and celebrated. My curls next to Amanda's straight blonde hair, my hazel eyes alongside her blue ones. Physical differences that no longer carried painful subtext. That night, after everyone had left, Jackson and I curled up on the sofa reviewing the day. Your family has come a long way, he observed, stroking my hair. It's remarkable, really. We're all still healing, I acknowledged, but at least now we're healing together instead of hurting separately. The journey had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. The lifetime of feeling different had prepared me to be the family's strength when truth emerged. My outsider perspective became valuable rather than shameful. The tools I'd developed to process rejection became instruments for building reconciliation. DNA had revealed biological truths, but the more important revelations came in understanding how fear, insecurity, and secrets had shaped our family for decades. Bringing those shadows into the light allowed us to finally see each other clearly. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it created space for a different future. I forgave my parents not because they deserved it, but because holding on to anger only hurt me. I forgave Amanda not because she had earned it, but because seeing her humanity behind her cruelty allowed me to release the power her actions had held over me. The most profound lesson came in recognizing that belonging was never about genetics. Family transcends biology, encompassing the people who show up in both crisis and celebration. Sometimes those people share your DNA. Sometimes they don't. The distinction matters far less than the love that binds you together. If my story resonates with you, I'd love to hear about your own family discoveries in the comments. Have you ever learned a truth that changed how you saw your entire childhood? Did a family secret bring you closer together or drive you apart? Please, hit like. If this journey touched your heart, subscribe to hear more stories of family transformation and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after decades of hurt. Thank you for witnessing this chapter of my life, and remember that our greatest strength often emerges from our deepest wounds.